In this video, we're going to delve further into data and the 6 W's. So, what is data? It is systematically recorded information, whether numbers, labels, etc., together with its context. Essentially, it's what data we are collecting. So what do we need to know about that data? Looking at these values, 44, 48, 55, 76, I have no idea what these values represent, why I've collected them, etc. How would we know? Well, we would need to know the context of the data, and that's the 6 W's. That's the who, what, why, when, where, and how. Yes, I cheated a little bit on this last one, but it's better than saying 5 W's and an H. So we've got 6 W's, and these are the types of context or the contextual clues we will need from our data. So first let's look at who. Who is this data representing? And who doesn't have to be people. It can be, if I'm studying bone breakage, the who would be the bones that I'm studying. So this is critical when we're analyzing data. Examples would be U.S. citizens, BU students, products on an assembly line, etc. What are we measuring? Obviously, we're looking at variables, the characteristics about each individual. That will always include a unit of measurement. And we just learned about categorical versus quantitative. So obviously, if I have a quantitative value, then I'm going to include a unit. Whereas if I have a categorical variable, there is no unit of measurement. It's just which category does that individual belong to. Why is obviously a question that we should be answering whenever we're collecting data. What is the purpose behind us studying the data? What do we hope to gain from studying and analyzing the data? So it sometimes can be helpful by looking at the types of data that we're collecting. For instance, if you're collecting quantitative, finding the average rating on a survey, versus a count, or categorical, finding the count of each response on a survey. So what we would like is to have the who, what, and why. And that's for a real survey. So for real life data, you would have to know the who, what, and why. For our cases, sometimes they are not going to give you all of those. When, where, and how would be considered nice to knows. So when did we record the data? Where did we record it? How did we record it? Was it a survey, door-to-door, etc.? This, how do we record it? We're going to spend a whole week of study on the different ways that we can record data. In terms of the when and where, quite often in the exercises that you will be given, you might not be given that information, but obviously if this were a real-world statistical survey that you were doing, you would record as much information as possible, because what we want is we want full disclosure so that people know exactly what was recorded, when it was recorded, how it was recorded, and most specifically we want to provide that information so that someone else could duplicate our study in the future if necessary. So we're going to do a couple of exercises together to pick out the W's. In those W's, we're obviously going to identify the variables, types, and units, etc. So let's take a moment to read this together. Because of the difficulty of weighing a bear in the woods, researchers caught and measured 54 bears in the Henry Dorley Zoo. The researchers recorded their weight, neck size, length, and sex. They hope to find a way to estimate weight from the other, more easily determined quantities. So we are going to find the W's for this particular situation. And notice I've written it again at the top of the page. What we would like to do is first find the who. Now remember, the who would not be the researchers. We don't really care about them. We know someone's collecting the data. The who is who we are studying, and in this case it is bears at the zoo, or more specifically bears at Henry Dorley Zoo. What are we recording? This is what data are we recording for each of the bears at the zoo. So that would be their weight, and weight would be a quantitative variable that we would measure in pounds. Neck size, which would be a quantitative variable that we would likely measure in inches. Length, which would be a quantitative variable likely measured in inches, and sex or gender, which is a categorical variable. So notice when I'm writing these, I do include the unit of measurement for any quantitative variable. When was this study performed? We don't know. It's not given in our question. Where was this study performed? Obviously at Henry Dorley Zoo, because that is what is given to us in our situation above. Why? Obviously the why is super important. Why did this study even occur? And that information is given very clearly right here. They hope to find a way to estimate weight from the other more easily determined quantities. So estimate weight given other parameters. And how? Well, I would say very carefully, but they caught and measured, and that's all we're given. So that's not great information. We don't know how they caught and measured. Honestly, maybe I just don't want to know. But that is the only how that we are given in this situation. Again, here is a situation for you to try to see if you can do all of the W's on your own. So a listing posted by the Arbys restaurant chain gives for each of the sandwiches it sells the type of meat in the sandwich, the number of calories, and the serving size in ounces. The data might be used to assess the nutritional value of the different sandwiches. So what I would like for you to do is to press pause and see if you can find all of the W's for the situation given. So let's take a look. Our who should be the Arbys sandwiches. Again, that is what we're studying, is the actual sandwiches themselves. What are we studying? The type of meat in the sandwich, which would be categorical, the number of calories, quantitative count, and the serving size, quantitative ounces. When was this? I'm assuming it's ongoing, but it isn't given. Where was this? It isn't given. Likely at the headquarters. I can't see them going into the individual Arbys restaurants to do this, but perhaps, again, isn't given, so that's all we need to know. Why did they do this? To assess the nutritional value of the different sandwiches. And how did they do this? It's some report by Arbys Restaurant, but the actual process in which they determined this wasn't given.